the shot?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
The way I see my work is it empowers people to go out there and start transforming their urban landscapes into a world that supports their basic needs. We don't have to wait for big organisations or groups or government departments to say, okay, we're going to do this. It's about mobilising people, mobilising community, and it's happening. Whether the authorities actually want to be participatory and cooperative, or they can be against it, either way, people will naturally, spontaneously form communities, because that's what people do. People naturally and spontaneously grow food, because that's what they'll do. That's in our nature. There is a hell of a lot of resistance getting councils, local government to go, yes, we're willing to allocate public space to grow food. We have so much space, so much land, and there's nothing edible. You can walk for miles and miles and not find anything that you can eat in a lot of public space. And that's a scary concept, because nature grows things equally edible and inedible, but we seem to have gone completely ornamental. And I did my research. I thought, how do we get to food-free cities? It dates back to about 1700s, England and France, where the rich landowners needed to show off their wealth. And the two most important things for wealthy people was land and your peasant farmers. Well, what's the greatest way to flaunt that? What's the most sort of extravagant way of displaying your wealth? To actually waste it. The simple way of wasting it is to make ornamental gardens. If you really had money, you can get rid of all the edible plants and go, we can just create art. We don't know why we actually carry on this symbol. It's a lost, meaningless cultural symbol of wealth. It has no meaning in the industrial era. You ask people, why do you do that? And they go, because people, the generation before them did that. And all the way back to one generation who was first able to actually take on the trappings of the aristocracy of the time, which might have been a novelty then, but it's not a novelty now. And in the face of climate change and possible, all the food security issues and things, it's essentially it's a silly indulgence. And we've ended up with food-free cities. And if you think about it in practical terms, a real sign of how well off a society is, how well it's doing for itself, is not how many consumer gadgets or how immersed it is itself in materialism, how fancy the cars are and so forth, how big people's houses are. It's essentially how easily we come by our primary needs. If you're walking around and there's food everywhere, that is a wealthy society. And a society that actually has a strong community where people bond together, support each other, that is real wealth. That's what really matters. We've just taken on the wrong symbols of what it is to be a society that has it all. So I thought it's really important to show people the capacity of urban spaces to support food production. So what we're actually doing with this model is leveraging all the natural processes that make a temperate forest work sustainably, because of course the most sustainable way of growing plants is nature, because there's no human intervention, no energy inputs other than the sun and rain and so forth. So we arrange it in a way that nature would want to arrange it, and it finds its own balance. And the amazing thing about it is very energy efficient. I've actually been weighing what it produces for the first 4 years, and on our 4th year we got in excess of 500 pounds of produce out of 600 square feet, and all organic, all natural, no sprays, no artificial chemical fertilizers, none of that, and all water-wise as well. So it's a very, very efficient system. And if you extrapolate that out to an acre, it's about 14 metric tons per acre. So people go, how much food can you grow? Well, my answer is, how much space can you give me to grow it? Or they ask, how many people can you feed out of your garden? Well, it depends on the size of my garden and how much. And I always say to people, well, how far does 500 pounds of food go? But the whole thing is, this is only one backyard. The point I've been trying to get across to people is every little bit counts. Each backyard is essentially a decentralised independent food production system. And when you aggregate a whole neighbourhood of them, if you have community as well where you share food and exchange food, failure in one crop in one space does not necessarily mean a critical issue. There's resilience. You're building a very resilient system. That's really, really important. And I figured permaculture, being an applied science, can be replicated like any true science. So we've fully documented, we've got hard evidence, we've got facts and figures that are totally transparent. The raw data, the compiled data, everything is available to the general public. It's on the website deepgreenpermaculture.com, so people can look at it and think through it themselves. And I've actually produced documentation of how I've constructed everything in this garden. The whole idea is not just say to people, look what I've done, but look what I've done, therefore it's possible, therefore you can do it too. And here's the information on how to do it. Modern industrial life could pretty well be an aberration. It could be a very bad, sad experiment that hasn't been proven before. There's nothing to say that it actually works. Whereas all these communities living together, growing their own food works. We have 10,000 years of proof. It's going back to what it means to really be human. We don't need to be locked up in, McMansions and high-rise apartments with, giant widescreen televisions and not talk to our neighbours. There's more to life than that. When people go out and actually start interacting with nature, interacting with other people, you realise there's a lot more to life, and life is a lot healthier, happier, and more enjoyable than what people make it out to be. Thank you. Cool. I should get people fired up.